So thousands of illegals in, a few out. The French are ordered to stop tackling migrants on their way to Britain. The Rwandans are suing us, and a judge wants to hide the fact that a rapist is an asylum seeker.
It feels unfair before it even turns angry. You work, you pay, you wait, and you're told there's no money, no space, no time. Then you look at what's happening right in front of you, and the numbers stop adding up. That's the mood that set the streets today. Not fringe rage, not online noise, real people showing up because they feel shut out while decisions are made over their heads. Tonight, Britain is dealing with the fallout from that anger. What began as a large immigration protest in central London turned into hours of disruption, pressure, and disorder, revealing just how thin the system is stretched politically, socially, and on the ground. By late morning, central London was already filling fast. Whitehall, Parliament Square, Westminster Bridge, side streets, feeding into them all busy far earlier than police planners expected. People came from across the capital and well beyond it. Trains in from the Midlands, coaches from the South Coast. Others followed live streams and posts spreading in real time, showing crowds growing and police lines forming. Public order units were in place early. Went up around Parliament, Downing Street, and key junctions. Officers were positioned shoulder to shoulder, visors down, shields ready, not because violence had started, but because they knew the numbers were climbing fast. The anger driving the protest wasn't hard to hear. People talked about borders they believe no longer exist, about housing lists that never move, about bills that keep rising while wages don't, about asylum hotels in their towns where heating is always on, water bills are covered, meals are provided, televisions sit in rooms paid for by the state, no council tax, no TV license, no energy bill landing on the doormat. And if asylum seekers aren't in hotels, many are placed into houses or flats funded by the public. Again, no rent paid by the occupant. For people choosing between heating and food, that comparison stings. Not because they hate individuals, but because they feel the system has forgotten them. By early afternoon, tens of thousands were packed into a tight central area. Banners focused on policy, cost, and control. Chants were loud, but mostly aimed at government, not migrants themselves. The mood was tense, but contained at first. Police used standard crowd control tactics. Roads closed, buses diverted, underground stations paused or shut to prevent dangerous overcrowding. Emergency routes were kept open. But these measures had a side effect. They compressed the crowd into smaller spaces. Movement slowed. People at the back kept pushing forward without knowing what was happening ahead. Officers repeatedly used loudspeakers, calling for people to step back, spread out, and move into wider areas. Many wanted to. They simply couldn't. Density became the problem. What followed wasn't one explosion, but a slow grind. Shouting turned into shoving. Small scuffles broke out near police lines. A bottle flew, then another. Cans followed. Police advanced with shields to create space, not to chase, but to stop the pressure from crushing people at the front. Several protesters fell during surges. Panic flared as others tried to lift them before they were trampled. Medics were called again and again for breathing difficulties, panic attacks, and injuries caused by crowd force rather than direct violence. Officers were hurt too. Mostly bruises, strains, impacts from thrown objects. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to add strain to teams already stretched thin after months of protests, football deployments, and routine policing gaps. As the afternoon wore on, the situation fractured. Groups broke away from the main crowd and moved through side streets. Police suddenly faced multiple flashpoints instead of one central mass. Vans raced between locations, sirens echoed through Westminster. Helicopters hovered overhead, tracking movement and feeding updates to commanders. By early evening, arrests mounted. Charges ranged from violent disorder to public order offenses.
Send them back! Send them back! Send them back! Send them back! Send them back!
Police leadership stressed the operation was about containment, not punishment, preventing escalation and protecting people caught in the middle. Still, areas around Trafalgar Square and Westminster stayed locked down well into the night. Transport across London took a hit. Stations closed with little warning. Trains skipped stops. Buses terminated miles from routes. Workers trying to get home walked through unfamiliar streets, passing police lines and lingering groups refusing to disperse. Many described the city as half-shut, tense, and unpredictable. Online, footage poured out, short clips of shields advancing, protesters shouting back, smoke drifting between buildings. Each video racked up hundreds of thousands of views, pulling more eyes and more people toward the capital and hardening opinions across the country. Some of the anger was inflamed by false claims circulating online after a recent tragic stabbing of 3 young girls.
You'll be the first one to put up against the wall!
Officials have been clear. The suspect is a teenager born in Wales. He is not an asylum seeker. Police have pushed back hard against attempts to use that crime to target innocent people. But once fear and mistrust spread, corrections often arrive too late. To understand why today escalated, you have to zoom out. Public services are under constant pressure. GP surgeries fill up before lunch. NHS waiting lists stretch on. A&E departments run hot every weekend. Mental health support, especially for young people, is oversubscribed. Councils warn they're close to the edge financially. Libraries shut. Youth centers vanish. Roads crumble year after year. These aren't talking points. They're daily experiences. Housing sits at the center of it all. Rents surge. Social housing waits grow longer. Temporary accommodation becomes permanent for too many families. Young workers delay starting families because they can't afford space. Older residents worry about being priced out of the places they've lived all their lives. Against that backdrop, immigration becomes a lightning rod. Not purely because of numbers, but because of capacity. Asylum decisions take months or years. People remain in limbo, housed in hotels, because there's nowhere else to put them. The cost runs into millions every day nationwide. Ministers say these costs are driven by legal duties and backlogged failures inherited over time. Critics say poor planning created a system with no sustainable endpoint. Either way, the bill keeps landing. For residents, the frustration is about priorities. They see cuts close to home while emergency funding flows elsewhere. They hear about legal obligations, but feel their own obligations never get the same care. Whether every perception is accurate almost doesn't matter anymore. The trust gap has opened. There's also the quieter issue of change. In some towns, change has come fast. Shops close and reopen under new ownership. Languages on the street shift. Familiar routines disappear. Some welcome it. Others feel disoriented. When that feeling meets economic pressure, it can harden into resentment. Polling shows many people believe the government has lost control of immigration and hasn't been straight about the trade-offs. That belief crosses age, class, and party lines. It's not a fringe view anymore. Police leaders were careful in their words tonight. Peaceful protest, they said, is legitimate. Most people did not engage in violence. But officers were put in an impossible position by density, speed, and the need to protect both people and key sites. Inside government, the response has been cautious. Condemn the violence. Urge calm. Acknowledge public concern. But no immediate policy shift. The Home Office faces pressure to cut crossings and clear backlogs. The Treasury worries about costs. Councils say they can't take more without funding. Aid groups warn against rhetoric that could put vulnerable people at risk. That leaves no easy path. Crack down hard and face legal and international fallout. Move slowly and watch frustration build. Misjudge the moment and trust erodes further. By late evening, police regained control. Roads reopened in stages. Transport crept back. Cleanup crews cleared debris. Officers stayed on patrol overnight, watching for flare-ups. Outside London, the impact spread. Smaller protests appeared elsewhere, sparked by footage from the capital. Online arguments intensified. Some called the scenes a necessary wake-up call. Others warned the country was edging towards something more dangerous. This wasn't the collapse of public order, but it was a warning shot. A sign of what happens when pressure builds without release. When systems designed for short-term strain face constant overload. When people stop believing anyone is steering the ship. Policing alone can't fix what's surfaced today. These problems sit across housing, healthcare, borders, budgets, and credibility. Britain has handled hard moments before. But resilience depends on fairness, clarity, and competence, and many no longer feel they're getting any of the three. Tonight, the street showed what frustration looks like when it finally spills out. What happens next will decide whether this was a turning point or just the start of something bigger. Do you think the government can still restore public trust on this issue? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for updates as this story continues.